very interesting way of understanding politics behind the nuclear issues. Therefore, it's very lucky for us to have Dr. Suzuki. And also, we have an organization called the APLN, the Asia Pacific Leadership Network for Nuclear Disarmament and Non-Proliferation. Okay. It was convened by Gareth Evans, former Foreign Minister of Australia, and he was the convener. And my colleague at the Australian National University, Ramesh Thakur, and myself succeeded him. And also East Asia Foundation is housing the Secretariat of APLN. And Dr. Suzuki is about soon-to-be member of APLN. In South Korea, we have former Prime Minister Lee Hong-gu, former Foreign Minister Han Sung-ju, former Foreign Minister Kim Sung-hwan, former Foreign Minister Song Min-sun. They are members of APLN. And we have a very strong desire for the cause of non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. But on the other hand, as a result of fourth nuclear testing by North Korea, we have a growing pressure for South Korea becoming another nuclear weapon state. And one newspaper called
that's okay.
Joseon-ilbo has been championed. The newspaper has officially adopted a doctrine advocating, Korea going to nuclear weapons. And yesterday they did a very, horrific article written by Ji Hae-bum at the Joseon-ilbo, emphasizing the importance of South Korea acquiring nuclear weapons. It's quite scary. But today I hope that Professor Suzuki can give us some idea about how to build confidence among ourselves. And also, I hope he will be touching the issue of whether we need a nuclear umbrella or not. Okay? That's a very fancy topic in South Korea. With brief introduction, let us give a big applause to Dr. Suzuki.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. It's my honor and pleasure to speak in front of these distinguished experts. As he said, I was trained as a nuclear engineer, but I studied policy issues, particularly focusing on civilian nuclear fuel cycle issues for more than 30 years. So that's my main theme. But I since moved to RECNA, Research Center for Nuclear Weapons, Abolition at Nagasaki University. My research also now focusing on Northeast Asia nuclear weapon free zone. That is my subject today. Let me start. How can we start this? As he said, Hiroshima and Nagasaki interesting distinction. Hiroshima is a much bigger city, and Hiroshima means actually in Japanese wide island. So Hiroshima's people wants to deliver the message very widely. In Nagasaki, in Japanese, Naga is long. So Nagasaki people try to deliver a message a long time. So that's a distinction. Anyway.
Interesting.
Yes. All right. So I just start with my summary, because if time runs out, these are the main messages I want to deliver today. There's about 4 points. One is just general nuclear disarmament situations. The biggest issue is, of course, nuclear weapon countries do not much, make a progress on nuclear disarmament. But one of the reasons for nuclear weapon states keeping nuclear weapon is the dependence of nuclear deterrence by the non-nuclear weapon states like Japan and South Korea. So I'd like to emphasize the role of non-nuclear weapon states, which is under nuclear umbrella, unless they have to declare that we will no longer depend on nuclear umbrella. Nuclear weapon states have a good reason to keep it. So that's the first point. Second, for Japan, of course, Japan is the only victim of nuclear weapons, so they have a strong desire to abolish nuclear weapons. But at the same time, Japan keeps the nuclear umbrella as a main security issue. So unless they have to change the security policy, not depending on nuclear umbrella, we cannot achieve the nuclear abolition. The third issue is I'd like to introduce our research institute, RECNA, established 4 years ago by Nagasaki City University and Nagasaki Prefecture. We propose a so-called comprehensive approach to nuclear weapon-free zone in Northeast Asia, which I will explain today. And then we just started this year, as a follow-up of this proposal, we tried to establish an independent expert panel on peace and security in Northeast Asia, which I hope become kind of track 2 process, and we call so-called Nagasaki process to achieve denuclearization of the Northeast Asia. Finally, this is my research subject, which is the challenge of the plutonium stockpile. How to deal with this plutonium stockpile. That's my favorite subject. So if I have time, I'd like to speak on this issue too. All right. I think many of you may be familiar already. I think the peak of the number of nuclear weapons, the peak in mid-1980s, and then going down very significantly. The problem is at the end, the curve is not just basically flat. Does not go down much, and we still have more than 12,000 nuclear weapons which are not under the disarmament treaty. So we have a lot of nuclear weapons to be abolished. And this is an interesting study by the British Commission studying the nuclear weapon so-called modernization program in all nuclear weapons. This is a tremendously expensive program to so-called modernize nuclear weapons, all nuclear weapon countries. Basically, it's a lifetime of the nuclear weapons is coming. The end is coming. So they want to renew the whole infrastructure. The United States itself going to invest more than $1 trillion every year, $30 billion. It's a huge, expensive project. And so, if they finish this nuclear modernization program, the infrastructure will last another 50 years. So the program specifically said, if we complete this project, we'll have a nuclear weapon infrastructure another 50 years. So this is, for us, this is a crazy idea. We have to stop this modernization program. And if you look at all these nuclear weapon countries' program, this is the conclusion of this British Commission, that there is little sign in any of these nuclear weapon countries that the world without nuclear weapon is not the part of their thinking. And of course, one of the problem is the allies. Allies is asking for a nuclear umbrella, so they have a good reason to keep all nuclear weapon programs. And then last year we had an NPT review conference. It did not go very well. Of course, Middle East issue is a major reason to fail. But I just show this picture from the journal The Economist in 2015, before the NPT conference. The article basically said all nuclear weapon countries, as well as non-nuclear weapon states, which are depending on nuclear deterrence, are so-called nuclear addiction. They are addicted to nuclear weapons. Unless we have to cure this disease, we cannot abolish nuclear weapons. This is an interesting expression. So where do we go from here? So I have basically listed 3 things. One is, of course, regional arrangement is necessary. Unless the global nuclear disarmament is very difficult to achieve a consensus, why do we focus on regional approach? And also multilateral groups. One country cannot achieve anything, so that's the first point. The second point is so-called effective measures of disarmament should be rethought. I think NPT may not be an optimal place. Conference on disarmament is not working, so we need some kind of better approach to get the nuclear disarmament. Probably so-called civil society participation could be essential to have an innovative scheme. But most important thing for us is, of course, Japan. Japan's security must shift to the one not depending on nuclear deterrence. And that's why we try to propose this comprehensive approach for nuclear free zone. Let me introduce what the RECNA is. This is the office. And actually, Nagasaki University Medical School was one of the main victims of the nuclear bomb, which is very, very close to the hypocenter. And so that's why we have a history of culture, actually, to study nuclear weapon issues. Medical research is very, very significant in Nagasaki University. So this is a natural thing for Nagasaki University to establish the research center for nuclear weapons abolition. And we have three missions objectives. One is, of course, academic research, and then policy recommendations, and finally, education and human resources development. This is one important item. And this is a kind of poster which we publish every year to show how many nuclear warheads in the world. The second one is policy proposal. I think I brought some, but you can download from the website. And then we dispatch young students, about 10, 12 students every year to NPT review conference, so that they will see the actual diplomatic negotiations for the first hand. So these are the three things that we are doing right now, mainly. And let me focus on this proposal we made last year. We had an open forum at the NPT review conference last year, and we invited. Here is Morton Halperin from the United States, Ambassador Eng Sai-han from Mongolia, and Minister of Foreign Affairs official came also. So, and Dr. Umebayashi, he was the first director of the RECNA. He has been working on this nuclear free zone for such a long time. So this is the proposal we made. The contents is. This is the background, of course, in the region. Of course, North Korea's problem continues to be a serious problem. And in response to the DPRK and also Chinese threat, Japan and South Korea's dependence on nuclear deterrence is stronger, unfortunately. And also extended nuclear deterrence, United States, as I said, in modernization program is being strengthened the nuclear weapon capabilities. So this is not a good cycle. This is becoming a vicious cycle. And so we have to change this vicious cycle. So this is also on the background talking about DPRK. But when we read, although this is before the fourth nuclear test, but we read all the statements by DPRK. There's still a possibility that the DPRK may come back on the table, but waiting for them to respond is not a good idea, because the more time, the more they make progress with nuclear weapon capabilities. So we have to do something very quickly, and that's why we decided to propose a nuclear free zone. One of the three elements here is one of the biggest benefits of nuclear free zone is the obligation of nuclear weapon states to provide negative security assurance, not to attack, not to give a threat to the non-nuclear weapon states, not to attack or to give a threat by nuclear weapons. If we get this assurance, we no longer need a nuclear umbrella. So this is the most important part of the nuclear weapon free zone. So a comprehensive approach, why we call comprehensive framework approach, means that not just the denuclearization of North Korea, we like to achieve the regional security and stability. So there are 4 points. One is to declare the end of the Korean War. And the United States should also, other countries also should give a mutual non-aggression treaty. That's the first very important condition for North Korea to come back on the table. And also they are interested in all kinds of energy issues, including nuclear energy. And so we try to, I think in this second agreement, we have to establish probably a Northeast Asia Energy Cooperation Committees. The third one is the nuclear weapon free zone. I will explain later in more detail. And finally, important thing is that nuclear weapon is only one part of the security issue in the region. So we propose to establish permanent Northeast Asia Security Council, just like in Europe, to make sure that the other security issues can be also discussed under this framework. And our nuclear weapon free zone is basically so-called 3+3. So this is, maybe it's called limited nuclear weapon free zone. We will not address nuclear weapon in China, Russia, and the United States, but all the three nuclear weapon states should provide negative security assurance against Korean Peninsula, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan. So North Korea, South Korea, Japan are the so-called nuclear weapon-free countries. So this 3+3 concept is the basic concept of this approach. This is based on the proposal made by also Dr. Morton Halperin. So this is the basic context of the Northeast Asia nuclear weapon free zone. As I said, Republic of Korea, DPRK, and Japan, the internal states which committed not to have nuclear weapons, and US, Russia, and China provide negative security assurance. And there are interesting flexibility in the treaty which allow Japan ROK can withdraw from the treaty if North Korea didn't abide by the agreement. And also moratorium on the current status is also a requirement also. And then eventually eliminating dependence on extended nuclear deterrence. This is very important to make sure that our security policy shifted to the policy not depending on nuclear weapons anymore. And there's a specific proposal we made at the end of the report. The circle one is the one that we like to follow up as a RECNA. The first one is that we have to study not just nuclear weapon issues, but also the regional security. How we're going to improve the confidence among the countries, not only North Korea, but also Japan, South Korea, Japan, China, all these three countries. Finally, we propose that the states should consider establishing an independent non-governmental expert group. This is to so that the government change, like South Korea may change the government, then maybe the policy will change. But we like to make sure that the whole this approach can be consistent regardless of the government change. So this expert group should monitor and make a recommendation to make sure this approach will be consistently pursued. So we will try to establish eventually this expert group. We will start with an expert panel, which is a more academic approach than this expert group. And then we had a workshop this February. Unfortunately, Professor Moon could not come this time. But in order to discuss this idea, we invited about 20 researchers from Japan, United States, China, Mongolia, and South Korea. And we proposed we should establish this panel on the denuclearization of Northeast Asia. This is the idea we discussed at Nagasaki University at the RECNA this February. And one of the initiative we did is also the research project, as I said, how to improve the confidence building in the region. So this is we got 3-year grant from the government to do security issues in Northeast Asia. So the elements is this. One is, as I said, role of non-nuclear weapon states in nuclear disarmament. what specific roles have non-nuclear weapon states have played, particularly in establishing nuclear weapon-free zone. And we are studying right now a case study of Australia. Second is the role of confidence building measures. What are the successful factors in establishing so-called track to diplomacy? My observation, our observation is basically track to diplomacy in this Northeast Asia is not working very well. So how are we going to improve this track to diplomacy in the region? And finally, the role of science and technology, particularly for verification of the nuclear programs in the region, in which I'm personally involved in this study on a so-called mutual verification scheme of nuclear programs. And so-called the panel on denuclearization of North Asia, we propose, this is not expert group that the report suggested. Expert group, the report suggested was much more higher level, but this is a more academic expert group, and make analysis and make policy recommendations, and also provide a venue for the frank exchange of opinions, eventually hopefully becoming a track to diplomatic crisis, and then eventually to facilitate the movements toward the establishment of nuclear free zone. And this is the idea we propose, and then we have invited the Pugwash group, East Asia. I am also a member of the Pugwash. We had a Pugwash conference last year in Nagasaki, which was very successful. And so we established a Pugwash East Asia group. So we're going to collaborate with the Pugwash group. They have already have some contact with North Korea. And Ulaanbaatar process, which is also Mongolian NGO, Blue Banner, started this process 2 years ago. And they have also invited North Korean delegations. So we're going to collaborate with those two groups as civil society activities to contact with North Koreans. And then eventually this panel will become the basis for the future expert group. So this is the idea we are trying to pursue. And this is the Pugwash groups in East Asia we agreed to form last year. And in the past, China, South Korea, Japanese Pugwash group activities are independently done, not collaborating each other. So we hope that we can establish some more collaboration within these Pugwash groups. And Chinese and South Korean Pugwash group have already had a workshop several times to invite North Koreans. So hopefully the North Korean will come to the Pugwash conference. Actually, in the last Pugwash conference in Nagasaki, North Koreans initially they agreed to come, and we were preparing for the visa until September. We had a conference in November, and then but at the end of September they canceled. That's probably typical, but unfortunately they could not come. But hopefully the Pugwash group will have some more access to the North Korean people. And this is a complicated chart, but this is what I like to explain. This is the idea of the Nagasaki process. We have RECNA here, project, the Northeast Asian Security Research Study, and the PCU Nagasaki Council. This is the interesting organization. Nagasaki Prefecture, P, Nagasaki City, and Nagasaki University, PCU, for nuclear weapons abolition. They established a council, it's a collaborative body. And so this place could be an initial approach to the government. And Mayor of Nagasaki and Mayor of Hiroshima always talk to the government very actively. So PCU Nagasaki Council is a big vehicle to link with our RECNA activities to the government officials. And also they have global activities connecting to the Hiroshima with the Mayor's Council for Nuclear Peace Mayor's Council. And so this is an important group to collaborate. And the Pugwash East Asia group and our panel on denuclearization of Northeast Asia. This is a track 2. And eventually we hope to establish expert group. As you say, Asian leadership, Asia Pacific leadership for leadership network could be a good model for us. We can collaborate with you probably eventually for track 1.5, eventually with the including government officials. And hopefully these will efforts start with Nagasaki, so we call Nagasaki process. Okay. At the end of the workshop, we agreed to establish this independent expert group, but the name has been changed from the pattern on denuclearization of Northeast Asia, because when we say nuclear weapons, North Korea will never come. That's so we call the expert group on peace and security of Northeast Asia. And also, we call this whole process the Nagasaki process, so we agree on this, the naming of this whole process. And then finally, the next meeting will be held in Nagasaki in November, hosted by RECNA. And hopefully, eventually, this will be hosted by various national groups to continue to this expert panel activities. Okay, that's the basic outline of what we are trying to do right now. And then maybe at the end, I'd like to discuss the plutonium issue. We also have this poster starting last year, try to express the amount of fissile material, highly enriched uranium and plutonium in terms of the number of nuclear weapons by Hiroshima bomb and the Nagasaki bomb. In total, more than 100,000 nuclear weapons equivalent in the world still exists. The HEU has more material, more weight, but in terms of weapons, plutonium has much more bomb equivalents. And HEU also is mostly for military use, but for plutonium, more than half is for civilian use. So this is very important finding that we try to deliver to the general citizens. So plutonium is a major problem. This is the HEU. HEU is declining. This is the materials in the weapons, and after nuclear disarmament, some of the HEU has been blended with LEU and then converted to nuclear fuels, has been so declining. This is a study done by international panel on fissile material, which I am also a member, and they publish this figure every year. The problem is the plutonium. The plutonium in the weapons has been declining. After you dismantle nuclear weapons, they don't know how to dispose of it yet. So they still keep in the storage. And the top, this part, is increasing every year. This is coming from civilian nuclear fuel cycle program, and has been increasing quite significantly. And more than half of the nuclear plutonium stockpile is coming from civilian nuclear program. And we call 70% is until here. This is declared excess plutonium, which is under safeguard, so it's non-military use already. So eventually, we have to stop this civilian plutonium stockpile increase. This is our goal. And this is the current stockpile of plutonium in France, Japan, UK, and Russia, and the four largest countries. All these four countries have a civilian reprocessing program. So reprocessing will produce plutonium surplus. So what I have been working on is so-called multilateral approach to the spent fuel and plutonium stockpile management. And Japan's Atomic Energy Commission tried to minimize the stockpile, but never successful, unfortunately. And so, unless they change this reprocessing policy, their stockpile will continue to increase. So we have to change this nuclear fuel cycle. When I was the government Atomic Energy Commission, tried to introduce so-called flexible nuclear fuel cycle policy, which means do not reprocess unless you are sure you have a demand. At this moment, Japan's fuel cycle policy is to continue to reprocess regardless of the future demand, unfortunately. So that's why the plutonium is stockpiled.
How could it be possible?
How could it be possible? Because the law could not allow Japan's utilities to dispose spent fuel. But the only option is to reprocess or storage. And since there is no storage capacity at the pool, the only option is to reprocess. And that's the problem of the current status. So unless you change this flexibility, plutonium stockpile will continue to increase. Anyway, there are multilateral approach. I don't want to go into detail today, but the enrichment and also plutonium disposition program is a big subject. But I'd like to focus on today is this mutual inspection and trust building scheme in Northeast Asia, following the model after the Brazil-Argentine approach. And I visited ABAC personally this February. It was interesting cases of Argentine Brazil bilateral mutual inspection scheme. I don't want to go into detail, but basically, in addition to the IAEA safeguards, this kind of mutual verification scheme will increase transparency and regional confidence. So I think, although the differences between the Brazil-Argentine or Japan-South Korea relationship, this could be a part of this nuclear weapon-free zone approach. We could introduce a regional inspection scheme as a part of the nuclear weapon-free zone proposal. And when we study the ABAC experiences, there are some merit and demerit. I don't want to go into detail, but basically, in the Brazil-Argentine case, and I talked with them, they said, no, Brazil-Argentine relationship is different from Japan-South Korea because there has been never war between Argentina and Brazil. So it's a big difference. But at least also they have also long-term collaboration in the scientific community. And so that was the basis of this approach. But at the end, there was a lack of transparency between Brazil and Argentina. At that time, Brazil has been working on military programs. So Argentina has suspicions, and so this program will eventually eliminate those mutual concerns. So this is a good model for us to study. How can we introduce this kind of regional approach? These are the things that we discussed with the Argentine Brazil people, that differences and commonalities between Northeast Asia and Latin America and so on and so on. But I think this mutual relation scheme could be an interesting scheme to pursue. We're going to do a research more and then give a conclusion sometime next year. Okay, finally, this is the PAGWASH conference we had in Nagasaki last year. And one of the topic I focus on this is this is the Nagasaki Declaration, but I just want to focus on this is too detailed. DPRK and this one, reprocessing. The PAGWASH Conference Council statement has never clearly stated that the reprocessing should end, but this time clearly we agree that the reprocessing should end in all countries, including nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states. But this is a big achievement in a sense that we do have people, scientists, engineers in PAGWASH group who are promoting nuclear energy, of course, and still we believe the plutonium stockpile increase should be stopped. And in that sense, the reprocessing is no longer necessary. Reprocessing is uneconomic and does not rationally make economic sense. And we have enough plutonium stockpile. If we want to use plutonium, we have enough stockpile to be used first. So I think this is the end of my talk. Yeah, this is my talk. Thank you very much.